There is the case where there being concentration as a factor for awakening present within. He discerns that concentration as a factor for awakening is present within me. Or there being no concentration as a factor for awakening present within. He discerns that concentration as a factor for awakening is not present within me. He discerns how there is the arising of unarisen concentration as a factor for awakening, and he discerns how there is culmination of the development of concentration as a factor for awakening once it has arisen. So, dear noble friends, the part that I have just recited is from the 4 foundations of mindfulness, which all of you know now. So before going into the details of that, as I usually do, I give a brief summary of what we have been discussing. So if I give a fair brief summary, it might take more than 1 hour. So I will be giving an unfair brief summary. Because the discourse itself has been fairly a long one, and we have completed a good deal of it now. So even the summary may not be as condensed enough. So anyway, when I was reading the canon, I found a nice discourse which relates to what we are discussing. That discourse is called Himavanta Sutta, or the Himalayas. And that discourse says, monks, it is in dependence on the Himalayas, the king of mountains. The serpents or the snakes grow in body and gain in strength. Having grown in body and gained strength there, they descend to the small lakes. Having descended to the small lakes, they descend to the large lakes, and then to the small rivers, then to the large rivers, and then to the great ocean. So in each of these places, what they do is they grow in body and gain in strength. And in the same way, it is in dependence of the virtue established on virtue, having developed and pursued the 7 factors of awakening, that a monk attains greatness and prosperity in terms of phenomena, right? So what we are discussing now are the 7 factors of enlightenment, right? And the 7 factors of enlightenment is a phenomenon. It's something that naturally happens just because of your mindfulness. And when you keep the mindfulness to the fore, when you keep the mindfulness in the driving seat. So I thought of bringing this discourse and showing the relevance of it. So when we just now, we think being in the present moment is something that will sort out my problems, or being in the present moment is something that I can use to improve my efficiency, or my to depreciate my inefficiencies. So it is much deeper and much stronger fact, or the I should say section of the mind, or strength of the mind, or part of the mind. Mindfulness is, if you really develop keeping it to the fore, it develops into 7 factors of enlightenment, not just 1. And those 7 factors of enlightenment starts with mindfulness. And we have discussed that. And now we have come to, I think, the 6th factor of enlightenment. And to come to the 6th factor of enlightenment, if I just remind you what the 7 factors of enlightenment are, in Pali, they are called Sati Sambojjhanga, Dhamma Vichaya Sambojjhanga, Virya Sambojjhanga, Priti Sambojjhanga, Pasadi Sambojjhanga, Samadhi Sambojjhanga, Upekha Sambojjhanga. Sambojjhanga means factor for enlightenment, right? So the English meanings of them are mindfulness as a factor for awakening or enlightenment, and the investigation of states as a factor for awakening, energy, rapture, tranquility or serenity, and what we are discussing today, concentration, and the last one is equanimity. So these things are developing with a linear relationship, dependence on the previous one, the one before that, the preceding one. So depending on mindfulness, the investigation of states arises. Depending on investigation of states, energy as a factor of awakening arises. And then depending on energy, rapture arises. Depending on rapture, serenity or tranquility arises. Depending on serenity, concentration arises. Depending on concentration, equanimity arises. And that has been, that's not my version of it. That is something that the Blessed One has stated in the mindfulness breathing discourse. There is a separate discourse called mindfulness on breathing. And that discourse states mindfulness as a factor for awakening happens or starts or is identified as mindfulness as a factor for awakening only when you have unremitting mindfulness, firm mindfulness. So firm mindfulness means either you have, without any issue, your attention to the object, maybe the walking, or maybe while you are sitting, to whatever you are observing. That's one way. And the other way is your mind keeps wandering. It goes to sounds, it goes to thoughts, it stays with the breath, and it goes to feelings that you have. But you continuously maintain your awareness. Right? So even that unremitting, although the object is changing, you don't care. You don't bother, you simply maintain your awareness. So even that gives you firm attention. Mindfulness means not the object. Mindfulness means your awareness, right? So you can have awareness just with one object or many objects. It doesn't matter. What is important is whether your awareness is continuing, right? So in any of these methods, if you have firm mindfulness, that is the start of factors of awakening. And when you have that, when you have this unremitting mindfulness, it gives rise to investigation of states. Investigation of states means when it is firm, you are able to see the nature of the mind. You are able to see the nature of the object. Say, for example, your attention is with the breath, and over time, you realize that the breath is gradually subsiding. Or your attention is with walking, and over time, you realize the walking is not as fast as you started. So this is just a simple example that you come to know a new aspect, new shade of your object. So like that, if you keep your mindfulness firm, it will go into much more details of your physical and mental process. So that is called investigation of state. So when this happens, you let it happen. And that letting it happen, what you actually do is, you examine things, you analyze things, and you come to the comprehension of what is happening. Okay, breath is, I can observe that my breath is getting shorter. So I'm not going to take deep breath or hard breath or make it gross. You just keep on examining, keep on analyzing, and then every session, every day, when you practice, you start seeing that the same thing is happening. And then it comes to a point very subtle, and it goes to the subtlest, and it comes to a point maybe that you aren't able to perceive breath at all. Then what do? You just observe, because that is what you have been developing, your observation. So to do that, when the object that you are observing has almost completely vanished, or at least you can't perceive it, to do that, you require some effort. You require some fuel, and that is called energy. And that energy, when this examination and analysis and comprehension is going on, is called energy as a factor for awakening. So it derives from letting the investigation happen. And this energy is called tireless energy, because you become really tired to let things fade away. It's not easy to observe. Some people start shivering, some people start trembling, some people get tensed, some people start sweating, and all sorts of things are happening. So you need to have very untiring energy to observe that. So we call it in Pali Viryam Asalli. So in English translation, which is close enough, is tireless energy. So that tireless energy is the energy enlightenment factor. So depending on this tireless energy or energy enlightenment factor, then the rapture arises. And in rapture, the discourse says, one who has aroused energy as a factor of awakening, or tireless energy, unworldly rapture arises. What it means is, what you were observing, your breath was the worldly thing, only worldly thing you were observing. Or your walking was the only worldly thing you were observing. Even that you don't observe now. Walking is happening. You don't really do. You are not involved in it. Breathing is happening. You are still living, but you can't perceive it. So the worldly things that you have been observing has vanished, has evaporated, right? But still you continue your observation. That is because you have some happiness, some rapture that is generated when this worldly thing is fading away, when this worldly thing is vanishing away, when this worldly thing that you're observing was depreciating away, right? So that happiness that happens within you is called rapture. And we discussed in detail. We had 3 talks on rapture. And this rapture is a way that the mind is manifesting its relaxation, or its happiness, or its situation where there is no tension. And that manifestation is happening physically. You feel rapture in your body, right? So it's sort of an excitement that you feel, right? It's like when you are getting ready to go for a party, or when you are getting ready to go on a holiday, you get some sort of an excitement. So that's a physical thing, right? And that similar physical thing is generated even when the mind is getting released from all the troubles that you have, all the tensions that you have, all the pressure that you have in the day-to-day life while sitting and while walking. Right? So that worldly rapture then transforms in one who is rapturous. The body and the mind become tranquil, right? Which means when someone is having this rapture manifested in the body, and it goes like a bell curve, and initially starts with with some sort of electric shocks or ants crawling on your body. And then it develops into, all appearing and disappearing, or generation and regeneration and degeneration phenomena that you feel in your body. And then when you still keep on observing that, then it gradually settles. It gradually calms down. Why it calms down is, now mind is now getting used to giving up things. Mind is getting used to renunciating the frictional part. Mind is getting used to letting go of whatever that gives you trouble. When you initially observe the breath, so it was happily giving up the sensual pleasure and even sense desire. And then when the breath itself was subsiding, it was giving up the breath, which was giving you some sort of friction, because that's the only thing that you have. And when that dropped out, then you had the rapture manifesting in your body. And now mind is observing that without getting hooked into it, without liking it. And even that gradually settles down and calms down. And that calming down is happening because the mind is calming down. The mind is not agitated. Mind is settling, right? So therefore, when you have rapture, continuous observation of rapture gives rise to body and mind tranquility. That body and mind tranquility then gives rise to the topic that we are going to discuss today, which is concentration. So to get to this concentration, what happens is when the body and mind is tranquil, this happens as an evolution in the mind, and which can accept and appreciate the least frictional path. So this is another evolution of the mind and developing a new skill. The skill that you had before getting into this was enjoying with the sense pleasure. Now you develop a skill to find out the least frictional path and then continue with it. Continue with it and continuously improve it by letting go of any frictional thing that you observe in the path. And this develops the sensitivity threshold. So you become more and more sensitive. Your degree of magnitude of sensitivity increases, right? So that is feeling bodily and mental changes much faster. That is the sensitivity threshold. So earlier, for you to feel something, it takes some time. Only after you have shouted, or only after you have given a kiss, that you realize, oh, my sense pleasure is working, or I am agitated. But now when the sensitivity threshold increases, you can feel, before you shout at somebody, you can feel that your body is burning. Or even before that, you may be able to see that you are having a dialogue within yourself to shout at this person, right? So therefore, your sensitivity threshold increase, and then you are able to perceive your mental and physical changes much faster. So this is where when this what you call pasaddi, or the tranquility happens, it is the real medication. When your threshold is increasing physically and mentally, this is where the preventive medication takes place over cure, right? So therefore, people are using practice or the mindfulness as a medication. But they do that only after someone has fallen sick, right? So it is much better to introduce that as part of your living. So if it is introduced as part of your living, it takes care of your health. So it's a healthcare system in itself. I'm not saying that you will never fall sick, that you will never get corona. But you may be able to feel that you're about to have corona much faster than normal person. You are able to perceive that you will have a headache much faster than normal person. You are able to feel that you will have a sore throat much earlier than any other people, because your sensitivity to the body is very high now, right? So therefore, you can take some salt water, some hot water, or some herbal medication, and you may be able to get over it very quickly, right? So, and of course, there are people who have done that, and it is possible, very much possible. It's a very simple thing. So, I'm not going to talk much about it because I have no research data about it, and I'm not worried about research data as well, because I have experienced myself that it is possible. So the present day, unfortunately, this has been commercialized, and the outcome is the inefficiencies and ineffectiveness of mindfulness, because people are using this mindfulness as a cure. Once the people have fallen sick on one hand, and on the other hand, they don't take mindfulness as a way of living. They take mindfulness as a medication. So what happens is we have lost the whole purpose of mindfulness. The Blessed One has introduced mindfulness not to cure people, but he is finding this as a medication for the biggest problem we have. The biggest problem we have is we die. He was looking for a medication for that. And no one is talking about death. They are just trying to prolong death, and if possible, not death to happen. And some dead bodies are still kept in USA and UK, assuming that they will be able to give life one day. Right? So the Buddha was looking an answer for that, and not just cure small disease that you will have along the way. So therefore, mindfulness has become inefficient, especially in the Western world, and it has been ineffective. And this increased sensitivity to the least frictional path is, as I said earlier, is the topic today, the concentration. So if I take the definition of concentration, which is given in the discourse for breathing, mindfulness in breathing, not breathing in mindfulness. In that discourse, the Blessed One says, for one who is tranquil, his body calmed, the mind becomes concentrated. When the mind of one who is tranquil, his body calmed, becomes concentrated, then concentration as a factor for awakening is aroused. Right? He develops it, and for him, it goes to the culmination of its development. Right? So the important section to understand concentration, and I would like to remind you, concentration is not our goal. We don't have an objective to get concentrated, but it happens. So if it happens, that's well and good. But we don't aim to get concentration. So this is one of the biggest problems we have in the meditation world and in the mindfulness world. Everyone is complaining, I'm not able to bring my attention to the object. And Buddha doesn't ask you. If it happens, it happens. For some people, it happens. And when you keep on practicing, it may happen. But what is important is whether you maintain your awareness and you are okay with it. Because you are not okay with it, you keep yourself agitating all the time because you look for the object rather than your awareness. Right? So therefore, one who has maintained this awareness develops this 5 factors and then comes to the second one, sixth one, which is concentration, and there calm body and calm mind. From the rapture, it has come to the tranquility where both body and mind is calm. So when body and mind is calm and when there are no waves, when you have the least agitation in the body and the mind, then you are concentrated, then you are calm. You are not disturbed by anything. And that's a process. So this minimal agitation leads to improved non-reaction. You are not agitated means not that the things are not happening around you. They don't bother you. Right? You have the mental capacity to be non-reactive to the body and mind phenomena, because you have gone through the body now, and through that you have tamed your mind as well. So it is a phenomena that you are realizing now, and that has developed this non-reactional attitude, and that is how you become concentrated. And the non-reaction here mainly refers to the mental layer. When I say mental layer, you can react in 3 doors. One is you can react physically, you can react verbally, you can react mentally. Your physical reaction and verbal reactions are already zero now. When this happens, body calm down. So you don't at least change your posture. You're so absorbed into it. Or you have given it up. And you feel aware everything. You are aware of everything. But you don't react. Bottom is paining. The back is paining. The knee is paining. But you have the attitude. Who cares? Not in an arrogant way, but you have the capacity to be patient. Right? So it's not something that comes overnight, but definitely comes with your continuous practice. So the non-reaction here I refers therefore to mental layer rather than the physical and verbal layer. So that support the mind to stay firm and at ease with any object or even without an object in Buddha's teaching is the concentration. Sometimes when this happens, many objects will be there, but you are completely calm in your physical and mental activity. Or sometimes you don't have any object. You may not feel anything. Still you are calm. Right? So the Blessed One, in other words, is teaching for us to be calm, whether you are with the matter or whether you are with the non-matter. Whether you don't feel your body at all, doesn't matter. Mind will be at ease because mind is now used to the non-reactional part, and non-reactive skill has been developed. So for this to happen, the Blessed One is giving some nutriments that may improve this concentration. So if I take the nutriments now, it might take another half an hour or 45 minutes. So therefore, I would prefer to delay it or postpone it to the next session. And thank you very much for listening. Hope you have understood a little bit of the little knowledge I have about concentration. So thank you very much for listening, and with that we can go for any discussion points if we have. Yeah.
Anyone have any questions?
I guess.
Just got questions.
Oh,
Yeah.
So, I guess like to be in the here and now, in the present moment, like it's sort of spontaneous. I find, like, is it like if you can't explain what you're experiencing, but can you still be like in the here and now and be present without being able to explain it? That makes sense.
It makes sense, very much makes sense. But and that is what is happening mainly for a lot of people. In Buddha's teaching, what he says is he's using 3 words. Asevati bhaveti bahuli karoti. Asevati means you get to associate with it. And then bhaveti means you continuously practice it. And bahuli karoti means no matter what happens, you do it hundreds and hundreds of times, right? So it as much as possible. So why that is done is to find a way to verbalize it, because mindfulness is something that we have not practiced in our world that we have been living. So it is not something that we find in our language, we don't find in our school curriculum, we don't find it in the uni, right? So therefore, when we really get to that experience, we are simply dumb, right? We have no way of explaining, right? So therefore, we will have to keep on doing it and try to explain like a small child, right? You know, when small children, when something happens to them, say they cut their finger, and they will just take the finger up and start crying and showing and saying something. So then the parents will understand. And in Sri Lanka, when they burn their finger, they come and call Daya Pucci. There is no word like that, but that is how the kids know. So that way, if we feel something, we use some examples, we use some similes, and then try to explain your experience. So then the teacher understands what and where things are going on. So what you say is right. So if you have such an experience, keep on doing it over and over again, over and over again, over and over again, and see your starting point, say either the walking or the breath, and keep observing what happens to that, the evolution. Just start explaining that evolution. And from there, we can start the discussion. All right?
All right. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, I think I practice in but clarify. Same question I have.
Sorry, I can't hear you well.
Yeah. That's come. Yeah. I'm doing that. The instruction I got last week about when I feel that my body is moving, like I want to go with what's happening, like that helps, and it's reduced number of corrections. Obviously, it's helping. That means probably I can. It's very subtle, like my body start to bend. Like I can feel that it's like inhale, okay, but exhale every time, tiny bit moving, and I able to correct sometimes, but sometimes it's going out, and then it goes like a total cycle, and then all of a sudden I start feeling that I bend too much, and then it's kind of come back. That's not the question today, but sometimes, even though, like, you always being happy if you are if you can concentrate, like if you have concentration, it doesn't matter how concentrated you are. Some days are really really darky and shaky, and like it's like um, I don't like the, I mean, you think, yeah, you're good with meditation, but someday you start meditation, it's like total bizarre, like, you know, just um, it's, I know that I don't like it, but it's still, why that? Because it's circling, and it's some days perfect, but someday I know that there are surrounding factors with life and things happening around also have an influence. But is there any way you could reduce that kind of like a very like a turbulence days? Like, is there any instruction on that?
Yeah, I mean, we can't avoid the turbulent days. What we can do is we can change our attitude towards the turbulent days. And it is it was mentioned in your explanation. Some days are fabulous. Some days you are concentrated, and you said you know that even that will change. But still, when the dark side is coming up, it shows how attached you are to the concentration. Right? So because in the back of your mind, you have a very strong love affair with the concentration. So when the dark side is coming up, you generate a lot of negativity instead of being mindful of it. Firm awareness, yes, it is dark, and it is something not pleasant. When that is happening, if you can accept that darkness and the unpleasantness 100% honestly as you, then you take your ego away from that. Now what happens is, you want to maintain someone who is having very bright and shiny
Person.
mind. So therefore, when that dark side of us is coming up, we start hating. So that is because we have underlying tendencies of hatred, mental corruption of hatred. And that is not a mistake. That is not a weakness. That is how we are able to gauge the improvement of the progress. Unless you have come to that layer of the mind, you won't be able to see that. You won't be able to spell it out this way. Unless you spell it out this way, I won't be able to relate to it. I won't be able to talk about it. Now we are bringing it out, and with the impression, with the idea that it can be wiped out in one pesticide. No. Those are things that are gone deep rooted in our mind. So we will have to continuously practice, maintain our timetable, and improve our honest mindfulness, honest awareness to them. And you are mindful, but the honesty is not there. 100% is not there. Voluntary is not there. All these three factors should come, and they come only with continuous practice. Right? You start being mindful of that just because I say. But suppose one day You do it just because it is you and I'm 100% accepting myself. Then you are not doing just because I say. It becomes your own understanding, your own knowledge. And until that comes up, until it comes to that brim, you have to keep on practicing, keep on practicing. And every practice adds a drop in the container. So container will be filled one day. Until that, you will have to be patient and be mindful as much as possible. When it becomes really, really dark and down, you start labeling it in your head. So that gives you energy to face it. When you label, you include your intentional layer as well. So that energizes you to accept it. Otherwise, mere observation may put you a bit down. And that's one reason that you bend, because that required energy is not there. So all these factors will culminate with the continuous practice.
Thank you, Grant.
Anybody else?
Another question.
Yeah.
How could you practice the walking meditation?
How did you?
How could you, like, just independently, like at home?
I'm sorry, I didn't understand the question.
So the walking form of the meditation we did tonight, how could you emulate that just like at our homes?
Right. So do you have the required space?
I got a tiny little dormitory.
Right.
A little dormitory, yeah.
Okay. So during winter, it's bit of a challenge. But even in winter, I don't know what your schedules are. When the sun is up, you can go out and wrap yourself as much as possible and do this walking. And of course, people will think that some nuts are fallen when you just keep on walking up and down. People will think that this fellow is crazy, but doesn't matter. We are not bothered about what others think. So you can do that. You can find about 25 to 30 steps space and you can practice that. That's during winter. In summer, there is no problem. You select any place. You select any place in a park or in the garden or in the road, on the walking path, wherever. Just keep walking, walk up and down. It's very important that the area, the space is flat and leveled if possible. But if you don't have your own space, we can't ask for everything, and we will have to be happy with what we have. And it will be very useful to walk barefooted if possible, but I know it is not possible during winter. Yeah. So and the other thing is, initially, don't take your evening walk as a substitute, because we will have to do this walking mindfulness without any objective. So in our evening walk, we have an objective, right? So therefore, it should be just 30-35 steps and backward, 30-35 steps backward. So then we take any intentional achievement from our walking. So, but once you master it for some time, say at least 1 year, 1.5 years, 2 years, then wherever you walk, even now, wherever you walk, you can walk mindfully. Whatever you do, you can do mindfully. Mindfully in the sense keeping the attention to the body and body movements and bodily sensation. Does it help?
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. And the other important thing I want to say is immediately after walking, it is better to sit. So don't do walking in the morning and do the sitting in the evening. So it should be immediately after. So that gives the best result. All right. So I think Trish is all right.
I'm good, thank you. That's it.
Yeah. All right. So we can pass this positive energies and share them with the rest of the universe. To do that, we can go to page 5. Right. So these things are happening because of the contribution of many seeing and unseen beings. So we will share this merit with all of them. To share the merits, we will chant the stanzas given in on page, starting from page 5.